and welcome to 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking three powerful questions. I'm your host, Rachel Vogel, and joining me on tonight's episode is Jeff Sosnow, the Executive Vice President of A&R for Warner Records. Jeff started his career at Rick Rubin's American Recordings in 1996. Later that year, he moved to Revolution Records, a rebrand of Giant Records' Irving Azoff's since-shuttered Warner distributed label. In 1997, he began a 7-year A&R stint at Dreamworks Records. After the company was sold by Geffen to Interscope, he worked as part of the IGA team, and over the next 8 years, he worked with Wolfmother, TV on the Radio, Major Lazer, and the All-American Rejects. In his current role, he's signed and worked with critically acclaimed artists such as Mac Miller, Rufus Du Sol, Brandy Clark, Billy Strings, Nessa Barrett, Benson Boone, and plenty of others. So, Jeff, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to get started, but first, how are you? How's it going?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me. Let's do it.
Here we go. Question number 1. Imagine for a second you are sitting down with your 25-year-old self. What one piece of advice would you give him on a personal note? And what one piece of advice would you give him from a business perspective?
Okay, so personally, I would say on reflection, as much as I don't have regrets about the path that I've taken, which was circuitous and strange in getting to Los Angeles from Kansas City, where I'm from, I would perhaps, if I could do it over, have moved to Los Angeles sooner than I did and started my sort of formal music business path just earlier. I was 26 when I started my first gig in LA in the music business, and it would have been nice to move here at 18 or 21, whatever.
Thinking back to that, how has the way that you approach A&R changed from when you first started doing it?
It's dramatically different in many respects, but in perhaps the most important elements, it's not changed at all. Those being finding great voices, great songs, and stars. It's somewhat different, as we all know, what a star looks like now relative to several years ago, decades ago, in fact, and how songs travel, start, and their trajectories and arcs, what we maybe an ear pick think, well, that sounds like a hit song, let's go, doesn't necessarily always mean that's actualized. So things have changed quite a bit. There's a whole school of data and research that people rely on mightily. That's not something that I really did. I certainly have embraced and learned to navigate and apply a lot of those criteria, but whether it's Benson Boone or Nessa Barrett or Rufus Du Sol or some of the things I've worked with and signed and recently, those weren't research-driven things. So relying on instinct and gut, I think that still means something. I should probably do my professional piece.
Yeah.
What would I change professionally? Well, this is sort of radical, but I sort of do reflect on, I probably would have taken on managing producers and writers ages ago, just because it was a burgeoning piece of the business a while back, and just helps. I've watched several of my colleagues navigate those relationships in ways that have opened doors and created varying paths of success. So I probably would have liked to have done that.
Was there anything in particular that stopped you when you were younger from getting into those relationships?
Yeah, being avoiding conflict of interest, contract issues, which in many regards is really quite naive because at a previous label, I think every single employee was probably managing or doing some side hustle.
All right, next question. Every industry has its dirty little secrets, and we all know that's no different in the music industry. Sometimes people think that's a bad thing, but that is not always the case. Sometimes they could be good. So, what's one secret you would like to share with our listeners about the industry?
That's funny. Dirty Little Secrets. I've had two artists over the years with songs with that title, All American Rejects and Nessa Barrett. I don't know that this is dirty or a secret, but let's just characterize it as perhaps overlooked right now. And that is, I think A&R people of varying stripes need to sort of have a superpower of sorts. And I think perhaps something that I've been able to utilize and tap into is an authentic and visceral passion for music, and therefore having listened to thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of music in various genres and seen thousands of shows. And it's like doing your 10,000 hours, right? And I think that many people perhaps these days are not approaching this path from a place of passion and knowledge, and it can really creep up, and those holes can be revealed in some really challenging ways for those individuals. I think that for me, being able to communicate to artists in various genres has been really useful because I've never signed one particular genre. Rufus Du Sol comes from dance. Benson Boone is more, alt pop leaning. The All American Rejects were a pop rock band. Wolfmother was a rock band. TV on the radio was indie. Billy Strings is bluegrass. Brandy Clark, leans alt country. Orville Peck sort of multi-genre. So people overlooking musical knowledge, I think, is something that everyone should possess.
And why do you think that there has been this recent shift over time of people getting into the business and maybe they aren't being driven by their passions?
Well, this is just a silly theory, and I don't mean to be cynical, but I do think that, I moved out here and just like picked up the telephone and called every single person and label and management company until someone let me be an unpaid intern. And, you can go to college now and you can study, quote unquote, the music business. And you can, I'm sure it might occur to me if I had had that option, well, this sounds kind of cool, rather than being an English major or pre-med or history or anthropology. Yeah, I'll do that. But are all those people really truly driven by a passion for music, or is it just sound like something that, wow, this could be a kind of a interesting line of work, but I don't necessarily have that sort of deep rooted passion. I don't know if that's what it is, but I feel like we have to be mindful of like the juxtaposition or the contrast between someone who just will fight and claw and just loves music and will do anything to be around it versus just sort of something on a resume, because I'm not convinced at the moment that it's really manifesting itself in a way that is populating A&R departments with maybe the right people.
I think that's a great call out. Next question. Throughout your career, I'm sure you've been asked plenty of questions, whether it was for an industry conference, the media, or even a promotion. But throughout all of those interviews and all of those questions, I'll bet there was one that you've never been asked but would have liked to. So, what is that question and what would be your answer?
This is a tough one. I don't know that anyone's ever really asked me what's the biggest challenge or obstacle in your career that I overcame. I mean, one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest, is making follow-up albums. There's not a ton of A&R people around who have made second, third, fourth albums for artists, and that is, if you get a chance to do it, you're doing something right theoretically, but it also paradoxically might mean what got you here won't get you there, right? Like you can't rest on your laurels, and the stakes continue to be high or higher. And so that's something that keeps me up at night in a pretty heavy way. And so it motivates you. And it goes back full circle in many ways to the drive to find my way through this business. And no one was going to stop me. I was going to figure it out one way or another. And so I try to approach those next chapters the same way, doing everything I can to hopefully actualize and get to that place where second, third, and fourth albums move the ball down the field in the artist's career.
So, speaking of rising stakes, before we close out this episode, Warner Records is currently one of the strongest and most competitive labels in the industry. So, I'm curious, in your opinion, and without giving away all of your secrets, of course, what sets your A&R team apart?
Well, it starts with Aaron Bashuk, he's the co-chairman and CEO and runs the A&R department. He's assembled a great, diverse group of people, and he challenges us, but he inspires us. I learn from him. I think he's willing to learn from us, and we try to be open and collaborative, yet competitive amongst the group of people and certainly amongst the rival labels. And I just think it's goes back to hopefully a piece of what Mo Austin and Lenny Waronker instilled during the glory years of Warner Brothers Records that Aaron and Tom Corson have employed and implemented here, which is really try to find great artists and be patient. While we all had to navigate COVID and Aaron and Tom had to navigate leadership change here and building a new team and navigating the challenges of the rebuild, while we may have picked up a few things that were like pure viral hits, the good news was a lot of the artists we were signing turned out to be real artists. And with patience and mentoring and steadfastness, we were able to help them and they helped us. And here we are doing it hopefully the right way.
We have officially reached the end of the 100th episode, so it's about time we close it out. Geoff, thank you again for joining me. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. To everybody listening, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Stay tuned for the next episode of 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking 3 powerful questions. See you next time.